These are the North American Game Gear launch games. I did a video about the Game Gear, now I'm just gonna do the launch games. The major noteworthy thing here is that Sonic is not a launch game. And why would it be? The Game Gear was released in April 1991, and Sonic on the Genesis was first released in June of 1991. Spoilers, time travel had not been invented yet, and Sonic did not exist when the Game Gear came out. Now, Sonic 1 on the Game Gear is an amazing game, and I think it outdoes Super Mario Land, which was a Game Boy launch title 2 years earlier, but things were moving fast back then, and the expectations were that the future would obsolete the past with bigger and better things. We were not in a period of nostalgia in 1991. The Game Gear launch does more to illustrate how far behind Sega was trying to catch up with Nintendo. So what did Game Gear have as a mascot? Mickey Mouse?
I'll clean up your yard.
Even by 1991, Mickey Mouse was a very dated character. DuckTales and the whole Donald Duck universe were very popular in the 90s, and Goof Troop would become popular as well. But Mickey Mouse had become so watered down since World War II. What did that mouse see? What is he repressing?
I'm just a little guy.
But Genesis had Castle of Illusion, and it was a good game. Then it was released for the Master System as a similar but completely different game. Then they clearly took the Master System version and just shoved it into a Game Gear cart. On emulation, it acts just like a Master System game. And you can see it in screenshots from back in the day. It was not typical to see black bars on Game Gear ports, because the screen is so small you'd want to crop in to use as much of it as possible. So, for whatever the reason, this was rushed. If Sega had a mascot, it was Alex Kidd. But that was really only popular in Europe, and his trademark infuriating one-hit deaths never landed on the Game Gear. So, I guess Mickey Mouse was Sega's counterstrike to Mario for this brief moment in time, even though they kinda did secretly launch the portable with their own mascot. We'll get to that. What do I think of it? It's probably my third favorite launch game. It has shortcomings, but it also has deliberately constructed levels that branch off into multiple paths, making the game more dynamic. Game Boy had Tetris as its pack-in game, so Game Gear got Columns, which was created in 1989 as a computer game, just like Tetris was in 1984. I used to play it on a PowerBook 180 before I knew Sega had bought the rights to it and was actively releasing the games. By the way, of all the Columns games, this is the one I've spent the most time playing, because it's what I had. It's before I had access to the internet where I could fill my hard drive with shareware. First, there was the arcade game, and very quickly it came out as a Genesis game, and it is an aesthetically wonderful game, which can be played with 2 players. Nintendo Tetris was only 1 player. The Game Gear version can also be played 2 players with a link cable, just like Game Boy Tetris. It's not as good looking as the original games, but it's not bad either. The music definitely takes a hit, but if you were looking for a stacking puzzle game to play on the go, this was it. It's the same strategy Nintendo went with for the Game Boy. A platform mascot game, which Sega was working on, would market the console to young boys, but a puzzle game would market it to everyone. Speaking as a young boy who got the Game Gear when it was bundled with Sonic 2, I would have played Columns, but I wasn't seeking it out, and I wanted everything Sonic. For me, this is tied for first place as the best Game Gear launch game, being held back only because the other versions of it are so clearly better. It's not like Game Boy Tetris, where it has its own aesthetic and the music was actually better than the NES version. This is a game that is compromised. G-LOC Air Battle. This is one of those games that is very visually impressive. The name means G-Force Loss of Consciousness, and it was originally an arcade game one of many at the time that sought to create a fully immersive experience with a cockpit-like cab. Considered the spiritual successor to Afterburner and its minor upgrade, Afterburner 2, it was ported to the Genesis, but in a reversal of order, was released for the Game Gear first, in a very simplified form. It's an on-rail shooter where you don't have a lot of control of where you're going, you just shoot what's in front of you. And the gameplay mechanics are very basic, but I was impressed on first viewing. I was assuming it would have been really laggy and not fun at all, so I guess I was impressed that it was actually playable. But this game gets second to last place in my do I actually like playing this game score tally, because it just falls too short. I just don't care about progressing, and it says something that after my first death, I'm ready to never play it again. Psychic World. So every Sega game came with these product booklets that folded out into posters. I had no memory of this game, but here it is. This is the North American box art. Generic and forgettable. Now let's look at the Japanese box art. 9 out of 10 humans with eyeballs would say it looks better and more accurately represents the game. I was expecting it to be a puzzle game when I first saw the North American art. So I can only assume that they held the lead on this game because it was believed that games featuring female characters would not do well with the boys demographic, even though games like Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat would show that boys have no aversion to playing female characters. So I guess the guy on the cover is Dr. Kanavik, a researcher who does experiments on animals and is not framed as the bad guy. Spoilers, he is the bad guy. The platforming may be a little basic, but the music is the most bangin' of the launch games and has way more personality than its North American cover suggests. But I don't like how holding forward makes you sprint after a couple seconds. Really, it just makes you run into enemies, so you have to stop and start all the time. You're supposed to need it to be able to jump to certain spots. It's annoying. I'd give this game 4th out of 6th place compared to the other launch games. It's not a game I'd bother to try and finish. Revenge of Drancon. I don't know who Drancon is, but this is a Wonder Boy game. So Wonder Boy is confusing because it's a series of games about wonderful boys. There is no one Wonder Boy. This is just a port of the first Wonder Boy game. Why not call it Wonder Boy? Like Psychic World, I assumed it would be generic because I had no memory of it, but was surprised when I knew what it was. If you had an NES and this game seems familiar but kind of off to you, it's cause Hudson Soft ported the game as Adventure Island, replacing the blonde Tom Tom with the uniquely built anti-hero Master Higgins. And that game is probably more memorable because he would continue his skateboarding antics in future games. Considering all the Wonder Boy games that had been released with a new Genesis game around the corner, it's like porting Sonic the Hedgehog and calling it Revenge of Dr. Robotnik. If nobody knew who Dr. Robotnik was. Also, this is the first Wonder Boy game. Why is he revenging? What did Tom Tom do to King Drancon? Spoilers, I looked up who Drancon is. I feel like there's some missing plot logic in this game, because in the end, you behead him, and then a tiger head with green hair takes its place, and he floats off. So whatever that means. Cliffhanger for a sequel? Is Eyes Wide Shut the sequel to this game? This is a very good game. The music is very catchy, but it repeats a lot. It's the theme for every level except the boss act, so 3 of the 4 acts in each level are the same very short loop. It works to create urgency, as our dude bro here is very amped and needs a constant supply of fruit to stay alive. So it's not just enemies that can do you in, low blood sugar is also part of the battle. But he does his best to keep a positive outlook on life. We are missing out on the can't stop moving animation that is a constant reminder to keep the pace up, but the Game Gear version does have one improvement. Holding up lets you jump higher. On Master System, you have to hold throw while jumping. Either way, once you get the mechanics, the game is spot on and feels complete, being very close to the arcade or Master System experience. I tie it for first place with Columns because, unlike Columns, this game doesn't feel compromised. And this is the closest thing to a mascot Sega had on the Game Gear at launch. Now, last and certainly least, Super Monaco GP. Originally released in the arcades, and then simplified but made into a larger game on the Genesis. Those were decent racing games for their time. This game is not fun to play. You basically gun it for the straightaway and then go slow on the turns. But the turns come up so quickly and sharply that even when you know they're coming, it's still jarring. Really, just ignore the map unless you're on a straightaway. Look to the sides of the road for those direction signs. You have exactly half a second between seeing them and going off the road to react. And it's not like the arcade version where a lot of times you're bumping off of stuff, and it's only when you really mess up that you do a spin out on the road. With this one, it's like every time you go off the road, it's a spin out and then a restart. Sucks. And you're not really racing other cars, it's all based on time. You will see cars based on your pace, and it will always be one at a time. It is my least favorite launch game. So, rather than end this on a low note, here's a bonus game. The Game Gear came out in Japan in 1990 with Castle of Illusion, Columns, and Pengo, which was a 1982 Sega arcade game. I know it well because I had it on the Atari 800, and here's the disc right here. This is how you got computer games in the 80s. They just appeared on floppy disks. It was released during Pac-Man Fever, so it has similar mechanics, but I would say it is a wholly original game. The problem with it on Game Gear is that it's 10 years later and it feels like it's just a port. There's no updates or 90s modernization, so it would be like if when the Game Boy came out, Breakout was a launch game. Oh wait, they did do that. They did that with Alleyway. So I guess it's the same situation, but it's a game I actually like to play, maybe because I already know how to play it. I don't know if the tile grid for the Game Gear would allow this, but I wish the game area was larger, so the blocks would be the size of the characters. See how they overlap everything they're next to? It just creates collision detection issues, because I'm pretty sure the hitboxes are the size of the smaller blocks. Either way, Sega chose not to have it be part of the North American launch, and I think the vibe of the 90s in America was about leaving the past behind. Early arcade games like Pac-Man did not do well on 90s consoles, and 8-year-old me had nostalgia for nothing but the future. Oh wow, you are covered in dust. Where are you going? It's so dirty. And you knocked over my thing. What a jerk.